We're starting with my favorite topic because this was the first topic I was introduced when I started working in an NGO in 2012. It's the Open Government Partnership. Today with me I have three lovely guests. I will just introduce you shortly and then we can proceed. Today I have with us Susanna Vink. She is part of the steering committee of the OGP. In her home country, you come from Slovakia. You also worked as you are director of Leading Watchdog. You worked as a Fair Play Alliance for 15 years. 2 years ago, she seeded a new NGO called The Currents that builds a sustainable support ecosystem for active citizens through which they strive to rebuild trust in societies and into democracy. The Currents also run one of the most prominent civic awards in Slovakia called White Crow for our acts of civic courage and defense of public interest. We have another person coming from the Open Government Partnership. Her name is Sandra Perna. She provides guidance and assistance to government in Europe, primarily in Southern and Eastern Europe. She facilitates exchange and learning between governments, as well as support to civil society organizations in these countries to push for open government reforms. Prior to joining OGP, which I didn't know, she also worked as president of the Academy of Political Development and as a director of UNC. And last but not the least, we have Emsad Dizdarevic, who is a program manager in Transparency International. He has more than 15 years experience of work in the NGO sector, and his interests are fight against corruption, good governance, rule of law, transparency, accountability, and all those topics we love to talk about. And some of you know me, but I will introduce myself shortly. I'm a program manager in CA Why Not. I as well work in all those fields that MSAD is working as well. So today we're going to be talking about Open Government Partnership. It's basically 11 years since the Open Government Partnership started, but it's like 10 years since the point started. And I remember each point we had a topic of open government, accountability. We were always addressing these topics. I remember when everything started, we were so hopeful, especially in Bosnia and Herzegovina, because like I said, I started working in CA Why Not in 2012. And we had so many projects, ideas that were like kind of built to facilitate all these processes. And I mean, things in some countries since then have evolved. Some in ours, we can discuss that later. But for the beginning, I would like to ask my guests to maybe just, explain what is Open Government Partnership, what was the idea of it, when everything started. In 2011, last year you had a 10th year anniversary, so we'll catch up on that later. And I don't know, maybe we can proceed with that for now. It's probably off. Just push it up and wait for a second.
Is it working now? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Danira. You're right. It's been 10 years since we started with OGP, even more now as we are already in 2022. And last year we took a little look back.
Something is wrong with that mic.
Okay. We took a bit of a look back as well to see where we are. And I think looking at it, we can be happy in a way, but also sad, as Susanna and I were discussing earlier this morning. We can definitely see after these 10 years of the work with open government through the model that Open Government Partnership has been introducing, that our model definitely works, and we've seen some really good commitments happening in the countries that are members, some good results achieved, some progress achieved. Our partnership has grown as well. So from the 8 countries, we've now come to the 77 member countries. We also have now a big group of local governments that joined OGP. And there are thousands of organizations involved as well, civil society organizations involved as well in OGP. So in that sense, we can be happy. But obviously, we have to acknowledge that overall in the world, the situation at the moment is not the best, to say the least. So we have to acknowledge that the tendencies towards the open government are not so strong as they were when we started, and the enthusiasm about the open government, which you kind of also mentioned on your example, are not the same as they were 10 years ago. We see authoritarianism on the rise. We see decline of civic space in a lot of countries. We see illiberal tendencies and trends, so we have to acknowledge that as well. So although we can kind of be pleased on our small, let's say, part of the world, at least in a lot of countries, although obviously even some of our member countries are not performing as well as we would want them to perform, but overall, globally speaking, obviously we have to acknowledge this as a fact. But maybe Zuzana, you want to add to that more?
I would just join you in your remarks. I share your sentiment, Danira. When OGP was founded, I was there as a civil society representative. Barack Obama was the US president, a very charismatic man with an incredible leverage, an incredible leadership globally, where he could really inspire a lot of countries and a lot of reformers. And I think that we were all much more hopeful than now. You know, it was a time of experimentation, a lot of new tools, a lot of innovation around open government, and tech, internet was coming around, and we could see early results, and we thought that it would change the fundamental deeper cultures faster. And I think that we need to recognize now, after we experienced Donald Trump, after we experienced the global pandemic, and now even the war in Ukraine, which collapsed the unwritten and written agreements after the Second World War that we relied upon, that we were maybe too optimistic, maybe we want results too quickly, and we think that really deeply rooted problems can be just fixed faster than we think. Let's just look back at the, for example, we are mostly female on this panel, and look at how long the campaign to make female voting rights a standard took. It took more than 80 years. And I think opening up government, facing corruption, vested interest, and hierarchies that existed in the societies for centuries, it's a really huge deal. And it will not come easy. So we tend to be frustrated when we see that the world is not going as we wish. And we have a tendency to question the models. I think that there is no reason when we look at the state of the world now to question if democracy is the right way, if participation and openness is the right way. It is. But I think it is much, much harder to live in societies that are open. You see much more than in authoritarian regimes, right? All the corruption, all the problems come to the surface, and you can't escape them anymore. You need to face them. and to find the solutions in an open environment where everyone has a say, seems a little bit like a mess or a problem, and it takes a longer time, and we need much more maturity as societies, as collective, to learn to deal with that. So I think that just the more, it's just more and more reason to progress and to hold on and to persevere in our efforts and not to give up. And, you know, to be honest, the war in Ukraine and the fact how deeply the Russian oligarchs and the Russian money interfered within the Western societies. Just let's look at Londongrad and all the problems that Great Britain is now deliberating. The US finding out how much the vested interests of Russia basically corrupted democracy, our democracies, our world, is much more reason to really persevere in the efforts and to go on. The only thing which I take as or the main challenge I would take as a civil activist who has been working in the field of anti-corruption for years was maybe a mistake. I don't know what you think about this, but when I look at our efforts in Slovakia and in the region, I think that I was too late to realize how our narrative, our anti-corruption work that focused so much on open data, on disclosing corruption and scandals, how much it actually fed extremists. In case of Slovakia, corruption and high levels of corruption was the driver used by nationalists and neo-Nazis parties to get firstly to power in the regional governments and then taking a stand even in the Slovak parliament. And this fact really made me to revisit the focus we had for a long time on opening up data, bringing litigation, bringing Freedom of Information Act, because we didn't realize that those tools are very hard to use. They are much easily accessible for the urban elite, for educated people, for lawyers. And all of us NGOs have been functioning for a long time in a professional environment where we could lean upon technologists, upon IT guys, upon knowledge of lawyers. We perfected our advocacy skills. We focused so much on working with the political elites, influencing legislature, that I think that we forgot the grassroots behind. And the grassroots now have been buying the narrative of the corrupt elites and not working governments and democracy from the extremists. And now what we see around the world is actually mass anger that turned against democracies. And I think that that's just a red flag for me and motivation to return to the grassroots and to work with mass population much more to make people understand that these tools are also usable for them.
You already covered some of the topics I wanted to ask.
Sorry.
It's not a problem. You totally led me into another direction. Should we put the video first, or should we proceed with the...
Yeah, maybe we can play the video on OGP. So
Yes.
for those who maybe for the first time hear about it, from the video you might get a better idea of basically what we do.
Sofia will turn it on shortly.
What will it take to solve forming societies around the world? Open budgets and contracts are ensuring that money isn't lost to corruption. Having a say in public services has let citizens shape the communities they live in. Equal access to the justice system and public information is open to everyone, especially the most vulnerable. The potential of technology is harnessed while safeguarding against digital threats. And our fundamental freedoms are strengthened, letting us voice our needs and concerns safely. OGP provides a platform for reformers to co-create solutions, monitor progress, and share knowledge with peers across the globe. But for this to work, We need more reformers in government to open new doors, allies outside government to help find ambitious solutions, and partners around the world to support these efforts. We need you. Join us in building a better, more open world.
Before we move to the region, one of the things that frustrates me sometimes and really hard, because I'm leading a program that is about accountability of politicians and about opening the government, and I'm constantly working with politicians, other NGOs and citizens. And I'm always like wondering, you can make a good law, a good platform, a good solution for opening the government, whatever it is. How to make sure that that platform, that law is sustainable? Because in Bosnia, we for instance, with the law about the freedom of access to information that we have been like fighting for years, sometimes the new solutions that are always like being sold as a better one are the worser solutions than the ones we had previously. And sometimes, you know, when you're building a trust and you're communicating with politicians, you're building personal contacts. And what happens if that person leaves, dies, goes in another branch? What happens with those law solutions? Because we see those examples all over the world. I mean, democracies are backsliding, like you mentioned. And I mean, I know that's a difficult question. That's a question I'm always asking myself what to do. Okay, I can make sure that this, for instance, municipality is open and this person that is leading this institution will do everything. But what happens in 5 years? How to make sure that all these things are sustainable in long term? It's a hard question. I mean, we can discuss it. We can maybe, I'm not sure.
Nobody wants to answer, huh? You don't want to go first?
Danira, usually you ask very tough questions, but you are saying that democracy is sliding down. But my question to that is, what is alternative to that? So I don't think that as at this point we don't have any kind of alternative to democracy in order to make better lives to the citizens. So what we can do, what all of citizens, NGOs, academia can do to push forward for democracy. I think that's the only solution. How to make that those laws that are adopted are implemented. In our region, we have that problem for since establishment of the countries, that we don't implement laws that we are adopting. Also, in last couple of years, we don't even want to adopt laws that we will not, in any case, implement, but we are not adopting them. But I think that pressure from our side has to be constant. We have to make some kind of solutions that do not rely on one person. Wherever something is relying only to one person, we will eventually lose that person. Like you said, it will go in another branch, it will go in wherever he goes. But we have to build up the system, which will be functional without necessarily individuals who are working on that. So even when you, as organization or Transparency International is working with institutions, we usually, and not usually, we always trying to build up the system, which will be responsible towards the needs of the citizens. It is particularly important at a very local level, where everything for the citizens is happening. So working with the local municipalities to build up the system that will be accountable, not to transparency or why not. We have to also build up the citizens to ask for accountability. Without that, probably we will not succeed. So we have to offer them every kind of the tools how to make those guys in power accountable to them. The best way, or the only way at this point, is by the elections, but we know how it goes with the elections. But we have to learn citizens about their rights, because citizens in the country at a very local level, they even do not know that they have a right to be part of decision-making process. So firstly, we have to learn them that they have rights. We have to learn them what they can ask, and at the end, what is very important, we have to show them that they can punish those guys who are not accountable. So I think that's the way how to build up pressure from bottom up. So I don't see another option, and again, I don't see alternative towards democracy. We are sliding again towards autocracy within the region, but I don't think that the majority of the citizens within these countries are opt to autocracy again, where we were 25 years ago.
I just, if I may add, I think, you know, many of us coming from this region were told too many times that the reason why we are in such a mess in terms of our societies and governance is because of the communism and the communist legacy. And I believe that it was a deep influence. But what is the war in Ukraine showing us? That it's not so simple. And I've been asking myself how we can make things more sustainable. And unfortunately, after 15 years of practice, I came to a conclusion that we can't. That every system is a living system that needs to be reinvented every day. And if there is not a critical mass who wants to uphold it, or if there are challenges in the world that tackle the very system, there might be periods of time when it will deteriorate. But as evolution is showing us, there is always a force who, after a certain time of crisis, reveals the need to rebuild the good bag. And I think that we are unfortunately now living in the period where there have been too many challenges globally, economically, the pandemic posed a huge strain on the societies, that the societies are somehow in a stress and looking for fast fixes where the authoritarians come stronger or seem stronger, but only in the short term. And also what the war in Ukraine showed us, and not only that, but look at what was happening in the United States during Donald Trump. I mean, the very fundamentals of that country and democracy that the US took for granted were under a huge attack. And what the war in Ukraine and the ties that oligarchs had to the systems, not only in Great Britain, US, but also in Germany and France and other countries, have shown us that there is a equally big lesson in front of so-called Western democracies that thought that their systems are much more rooted and much more stable. So it seems that somehow there are times where we face the same challenges. And on the contrary, many countries from our region have been producing really innovative reforms, for example, in the area of beneficial ownership, opening up ownership registers of corporations. In case of Slovakia, even having a very unique verification mechanism through the courts that can not only pose sanctions, but can use the beneficial ownership data to stop public contracts and to block very powerful businessmen for any relationship, any contractual relationship with the state. And it has been not used only domestically, but for example, thanks to the Slovak register, business ties and ownership ties of the former Czech Prime Minister Babiš have been discovered, and they have been used by European Commission to sanction him in a very important conflict of interest case. So on the contrary, the push that we have had in this region and the challenges that we were facing meant that we produce more innovative and open solutions than the Western countries. And now it's the Western countries who are often blocking the progress in this area of beneficial ownership, for sure. There has been a fifth anti-money laundering directive in the European Union that was supposed to open up public registers across the board, and now our colleagues from Access Info Europe are showing us and telling us that this is under attack, and the European Commission is reconsidering because of the pressure coming not from this region but from Germany, France, and other developed democracies. So unfortunately, I think a very short answer to your question is that we can't make sure. We need to reinvent it. And the only solution I came with after 15 years of trying to figure it out is that our only hope is to diffuse power centers. So make sure that the legal structure of our countries is not concentrating power in the hands of a few, but makes sure that there are institutions and people who might not function for a certain time, but then suddenly a very important or a good person can be voted in. Like, for example, in the case of Slovakia, where we were facing very dark times, there was a very strong ombudsperson. And because of those powers that she held, she could, with the state authority, of course under attack of political parties, but with the state authority and with the powers that she could use, she brought so many things to the light that she inspired public movement that was increasing pressure, and that was fed not only by articles from the press or by anonymous sources, but was backed up by an official statement of an ombudsperson. And this just, started up again the wheel and greased the wheel of more and more public pressure, which led to some changes. And of course, they were not sustainable, but over time, I am a very optimistic person. I think we progress to better societies. I think we are better off than 300 years ago or 400 years ago globally. So we do progress, but in the short time, we might get frustrated because we think that we are losing the fights, but it doesn't mean that we are losing the war.
Yeah, I would agree with what Susanna and Emsad said. I definitely think that it's not a linear thing. Like, you don't have democracy and then you just have progress. It doesn't work like that. So you have setbacks, you have crises, and as we have seen, even with some of the things that we totally took for granted, like at the beginning, Susanna was mentioning women's rights, but we see that women's rights are under attack in a lot of countries at this point. So some of those things that we thought were solved during the time of our grandmothers are now again being questioned. So that's just one example. Really, and we see it as a global thing that's kind of happening, and we thought that it would never happen again. So I would agree with Emsad. I really do think that civic education matters. I think it's really an important thing, and something that also has, in a way, proven in praxis, because we have seen in the United States that they, at one point, thought that, they're doing well, they're established democracy, they've been teaching civic education for a long time, and there's no need for it, like it's in the society. But it doesn't work like that. You really need to work with every new generation and really make sure that citizens are equipped to be active and responsible citizens. And that can be a problem in some of the countries, such as ours here in region, that don't have such a also strong legacy of democracy. So we are still new at it, really. It might seem a long time for all of us living here, and sort of it's been our whole life, right, that we've kind of been in a democracy, but we still don't see more significant changes. But it takes time, as Susanna was saying. So my thinking is that that's definitely one important thing. And on the other thing, I would agree with Susanna, definitely having powers dissoluted is important. And I think having checks and balances in place and having strong institutions is very important. So the institutions that basically are independent and can react if there's any wrongdoings happening in a country. And I think that's one of the big problems here in the regions. the lack of such institutions. So we often see that things are done improperly, and there's no sanctioning or even reactions to it. And on the other hand, we have citizens that are not equipped as well to demand for better things. So we are kind of having just some civil society organizations that are trying to push for certain things, but they're not strong enough. So I think that's a long process, and this is something that basically we are trying to do also through the Open Government Partnership, because we focus on three things. That's transparency, participation, and accountability. So all those three things together should bring us to a better society, right? And when we assess the commitments that countries have in their action plans, we always look for the transformative commitments that what Emsad was talking about. So not just have a commitment that you will do something that will be some flashy event or something, but really have structural changes introduced that will, in a long term, really make a significant change in a country, a reform that will stick and really change the whole culture of how things are done.
I definitely must agree with you. This civic and the citizen education is really, really, really important. I was joking with Darko, like I think 2 months ago, that we should just do the projects we've been doing for years again and again, because you really need them. I mean, it's funny because usually when you're applying for a new project to donor, they're always asking for something new, something inventive, but you always need to teach people about their rights, which are pretty, freedom of access to information. We've been talking about that thing for years. But we still need to, because obviously things are not changing in a better way. But in order to, make sure that, you need to educate citizens. But in order for them to, be included in the process, they need to have some success stories. They need to know that whatever they're doing will have some effect in the end. Do you have any good success stories to share with us that maybe would, inspire people, or just to share, some of them?
Yeah, again, coming back to Ukraine, I think the most impressive example comes from Ukraine. The deep oligarchic structures that this country faced and was trying to get rid of over the years. It was a country which was one of the most celebrated and active within the OGP community. And this is maybe the power of the global network. When it doesn't go well domestically, these reformers are usually in defense and under attack domestically. But where they get the support from their peers internationally, it's very often those platforms like OGP are a safe haven for these people. And often, due to the involvement and due to the relationships and visits that come from other countries, there is a much more international oversight, and there is much more international pressure to these countries, and B, these people go abroad not only to get an inspiration, but also find the ways and strategies how to cope with their domestic situation. I remember that it was very crucial for me as an anti-corruption activist to be at conferences like this and sit in the bars then and talk about what we go through and find out how many of those strategies of politicians and oligarchs are the same. So I would definitely mention the Prozoro and Dozoro of Ukraine. There were two projects that started a huge public monitoring of public procurement. When Ukraine opened up public procurement, they built a platform that people could use to watch the procurements, and it saved over the time, I think it's an estimated of $1 billion. They could see that thanks to this portal that was heavily overseen by public, the competition in the tenders increased. Many companies who wanted to manipulate the process were discouraged. And a very nice build-up of this project has been done in Italy, where there was not, I think, the public coesione. I don't speak Italian, open coesione. Sorry, I don't speak Italian very well. But there was also a project that built up a very interesting layer on top of an open procurement, open data portal, where they educated students to be auditors on site. And they took the data from the portal and visited the concrete projects, and thanks to the training, they could discover discrepancies and bring them up to the attention. So there are many projects like this where there is a lot of inspiration around the world. We just have to make sure that it turns to a steady flow, right?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of success stories. These are just a few. And I would here just stress again that is, again, on these examples, we see how this combination where we have, transparency, accountability, and citizen participation together works great. And you really achieve great results. In the case of Ukraine, it was all the changes that it brought to the public procurement. In the case of Italy, it was basically the savings that they had on projects, because some of the money got returned because basically they were misused and so on, and basically just preventing that type of corruption and misuse of funds. Also, we have other examples like that all over the world, like to go a bit further, like in Nigeria, Kaduna State, they've introduced your eyes and ears application, so basically inviting citizens to report problems to the government, where government is obliged to respond and solve those problems, whether it's the street that hasn't been built, or the hospital that's not providing sufficient care, or anything else that's being funded by the public money and it's not functioning as it should. So again, preventing the misuse of public funds and really delivering public services that are needed for citizens. And maybe here I would invite us again to watch a video, because we also have some good examples from the region. North Macedonia has been doing very well in OGP, and they are the first country in the region that also started working on access to justice. And we've been doing videos to promote some of the success stories around our partnership, and this is the first video we have basically for a country, for a commitment coming from this region. So I think it's a great success and an example that we often promote within the partnership, because we really find it important to work also on the securing of the access to justice, and especially for the vulnerable, marginalized groups in the society, because when we talk about the participation, we don't want the participation of the few, but we really want the whole of society to be able to participate and to also benefit from public services. So yeah, maybe.
Yeah, Sofia will just...
Жешко нормално времето, имаше сонце и се договоривме со друштвото да одиме на базен. Појдовме таму и ни рекоа дека не можеме да влеземе. Од македонската нација појдаа таму двајца, не ги пуштаа. И појдовме тоа обезбедувањето да го прашаме зошто ние да не влеземе. И еден од таму се фрле, кажа дека газда во базено не пушта роми. Се повлековме назад и тогаш навистина ни падна многу неубаво, тука пред многу луѓе не устраме уствари.
Дискриминацијата и негативните ставови кои што постојат кон ромската заедница е нешто кое што е длабоко вкоренето во нашето општество, иако и со кое што сите од најмали нозе се соочуваат, со кое што многу граѓани досега се соочиле и секој на свој начин индивидуално се обиделе да реагираат. Проблемот со ограничен пристап до градскиот базен во Прилеп е исто така долгогодишен проблем.
Мирен протест, тргнувањето ни беше од џамија па се до базен. Да си го покажеме нашиот реву. Па се чувствував многу добро, значи не бев така како не гледаше градоначалникот или станица 5 како црни овци. Градоначалникот кажа дека имаме и ние права како и сите што имат луѓето.
Во континуитет работиме на правно зајавнување на граѓаните како тие би биле доволно силни, би имале доволно знаење понатаму да можат да ги остваруваат своите права и без наше вклучување. Нашата цел е да креираме граѓани кои што ќе можат сами за себе да се изборат за своите права и за заедниците во кои што живеат.
Since we are in the neighborhood, why don't we talk a bit about Bosnia and Herzegovina and our path since we joined OGP in 2012, I think.
I must say it is interesting story, and I share your feelings that you were mentioning at the beginning about OGP. Actually, our story started in 2011 or 2012, where civil society organization, including Why Not and Transparency International, saw an opportunity in this kind of organization or initiative, whatever, to increase transparency, accountability, and increase civil participation in process in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And we had during the last 10 years ups and downs. It usually goes in Bosnia like that. So first up was when we approached the initiative in 2014. That was very important. It was something what we advocated together for, and finally we approached it. And after that approach, after that very nice feelings in that period, then we started to go down. So it took us pretty much long time to start actually with the obligations that the country accepted by becoming a member of OGP. And at the beginning we were very enthusiastic and wanted to include everyone in the story. So we thought at the beginning, okay, we will include state level government, we will include entities, we will include Brčko district, everyone will be happy about that. And they were happy, and it took us more than 2 years just to create a multi-stakeholder forum. And finally, when we established multi-stakeholder forum, we waited another 2 years to have first session. But during that period of time, we didn't lose time, civil society organization, and I must say together with institutions that are willing to go in this direction, but on the operational level, not on the political level. We even created alternative action plan. We developed some measures in that action plan, and even started with implementation of some of those measures like proactive transparency in that period of time. And finally, in 2019, we figured out that this composition of multi-stakeholder forum, which actually which is similar to the all forums within the country, and providing to all members of this forum to block everything. Finally, that was another up. Finally, a Ministry of Justice as institution in Bosnia and Herzegovina as a focal point for OGP. Even we had problems with that at the beginning, where Minister of Foreign Affairs signed this letter for joining OGP, and it took them some time to figure out that we are actually members by the Ministry of Justice, who is in charge for implementation. So in 2019, we adopted first action plan and started with implementation of the plan, also by restructuring multi-stakeholder forum, which is now at this point, I must say, probably you can confirm that this kind of multi-stakeholder forum that is established in Bosnia could actually serve as good practice for the rest of the countries, because from the side of civil society organization, we really fully participate in all the work of multi-stakeholder forum. Our initiatives are usually accepted by multi-stakeholder forum, and to be honest, we are feeling as a part of the system. Yeah, and and also we are changing position of chair of multi-stakeholder forum every 1 year between a representative of government and a representative of civil society organization. I'm not sure whether I'm not now chair or vice chair. And we had a very nice implementation of a couple of measures that we committed. I would draw attention to those related to proactive transparency. We even managed to adopt official policy and standards of proactive transparency by Council of the Ministers, and I must say that improved transparency of the institutions at the state level for pretty
Really
much.
high.
But also what would I like to highlight here is the one of commitment which was implemented by the Agency of Statistics in Bosnia and Herzegovina. They committed to publish data in open source, and they have done that, and they have developed everything with all of this time series, with everything, and those were very good examples how on the institutional level, if there is a will for that, we can go step forward, and they now publishing everything, and in draft of next action plan, they are even want to go step forward in that direction. But after implementation of that action plan, we again started to go down, as usually. Multi-stakeholder forum, which is in charge for preparation of national action plan, prepared that, sent to the Council of the Minister and it is there for more than 1 year, and unfortunately not adopted yet, which makes us some problems regarding the deadlines that we put it in the action plan. So probably we will have to change that to move everything for at least 1 year forward. But on the other hand, we already started with implementation of those measures that are put in the action plan, because we know that due to political situation, we probably until the elections we will not have that action plan. But we started with implementation of the measures because we really think that those measures that we are put in the action plan are very important. And also one thing which is not fully used by us in Bosnia and Herzegovina is OGP local. I think that at least until we are members of OGP, I hope that we will stay member of OGP, because we had this situation when we were put it on the side until we do some things in Bosnia. I hope that we will stay still members of OGP, but I definitely see OGP local as a very important thing for other levels of government, because there is more will at the lower levels, particularly at the levels of cities or even cantons in Bosnia and Herzegovina, to go step forward in this direction. And I think that besides all of this at the state level with action plan and membership, I think that our efforts should go in that direction for the next call. I know that the last one ended up, and as far as I know, nobody from Bosnia applied for that. So that's something what multi-stakeholder forum at state level should bring to themselves as a headline for the next period, to find the locals who are ready to join this initiative. And I think that by doing some success at the local level, we could actually show that this story could help primarily to the citizens. So that's the key point of all of this.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, because we don't have plenty of time left. Yeah, sure. Say.
No, I just wanted to add a bit to this, but looking more broadly in the region, because apart from the challenges that were faced in Bosnia and Herzegovina, we see also in other countries in the region that there are a lot of challenges. So even when the process, like you said, is working and there are stakeholders both on the government and civil society side that really want to see it going forward, it gets stopped for different reasons, whether it's the occasional lack of political will or the political crisis that's happening in a country on a more broader basis, or whether it's the lack of resources or anything else. So there's always some kind of a challenge. But I would like to here point out one thing, and that is that when we compare things within OGP, what we can see for the Western Balkans region and commitments that are made here on the paper, basically the region is doing better than EU and other European countries on the terms of ambition. They really have very ambitious commitments on paper. But where we come to a problem is what Emsad mentioned earlier in one of his answers, is the implementation. So when we look at the implementation, that's where the things get stuck. And this is where the rest of Europe outperforms the region here. So this is something that needs to be looked at more closely, like what are basically the reasons for this to happen. So why people here commit to so many ambitious things, but they don't actually implement it, and we really should all work together to kind of improve this implementation. This is something that we've been, as an organization, doing more on a more advanced level in North Macedonia in the previous few years, as we have seen a lot of potential there. And really now, after those 3 years, I can say that we've made some great progress in that country. I hope it remains sustainable and that they will continue working like this in future. But for now, we can say that, in North Macedonia, for the first time in the region, now they have the action plan where they have the government, the parliament, and the judiciary committing to opening up. So all 3 pillars of the government are included in that, and they also have representatives in the local programs. So they've really expanded a lot, and I really do hope that other countries in the region will follow in their footsteps, and we will definitely continue working through our Western Balkan exchanges that we've been doing on a sort of sub-regional level to push for some of these reforms to happen. In particular, this year we'll be working on beneficial ownership, which we started last year. Zuzana was also on one of the events we organized. She was there with colleagues from Slovakia sharing their experiences. So we really do hope to see things moving up in the region, and hopefully we can support the countries here as they go forward.
One of the questions I wanted to ask is definitely the topic of beneficial ownership. We saw so many cases of like Panama Papers, Pandora Papers last year, and how important it is to have transparency of beneficial ownership. We put it in our plan. It's very vaguely put in there, but it is what it is at this point. But I'm wondering if the OGP has some plans in terms of like promoting more extensively the importance, because we've been discussing this in the previous minutes, how it is important to divide these power clans, or how to tell them.
I must say, I believe is one of the toughest challenges of our times, and it goes really deeply into the roots of democracy, because if we don't know who the real owner of the company is, how can we track him? How can we prosecute him? How can we return the money back? That's not possible. And the whole financial system around the world supports, unfortunately, up till now, guys in escaping their responsibility for what they do. And the world, as we have seen, is much more interconnected. And I think OGP has for many years recognized the importance and is running continuous campaign. And what I see, it already starts to bring fruit. When it started at the summit in London, UK was one of the first countries, together with Ukraine, boldly announcing that they will open up this data. And there was so much talk at that time how it will harm the British economy. Everybody feared that the corporations will escape Great Britain because suddenly it will expose the owners, and it hasn't happened. The same thing happened in Slovakia. We opened up the data and we added a very tough verification regime, and it hasn't harmed the economy. So there's no proof that this would be happening. And since that example, it was an OGP summit in, I think, 2014-15 when that happened, and the first countries were announced. Now it's one of the fastest growing areas within OGP globally, and there are number of countries who are already implementing the registers, who are opening up. But we need much more stronger democracies on board. And I heard recently, which is a very good news, that also through the OGP mechanism and through the global advocacy that has been done towards Canada prior to the last summit that was held there, Canada is now opening up their federal register of beneficial ownership. And I would encourage everyone to join the stream. I think OGP is ready to provide with key partners, peer exchange, technical assistance, help in implementation. There is even a beneficial ownership leadership group that is very helpful in promoting this area. I don't know if I have forgotten something.
Not much. I definitely agree with you. I was just checking last night the numbers. So it's definitely still a big problem, and majority of the countries in the world don't have beneficial ownership registers. But when we look at OGP, then things are a little bit better, because we have like about 1/3 of our members really working on beneficial ownership already. So I agree with Zuzana, more needs to be done. Also here in region, MSAD shared with me good news that soon you can also expect the new law that will basically provide grounds for you to establish the register, with Bosnia being the only country at the moment in the region that still doesn't have it. So just to the things that Zuzana was saying, I would just add that really with this year, we are planning to create a knowledge alliance on beneficial ownership here in the region. We already started working on that last year in a more informal way. We hope to formalize it soon. We will have it presented in the next few months, and we really hope that we can bring all of the different stakeholders from the region together to sort of learn from each other, but also to learn from others like Slovakia and other successful countries, Ukraine and many others that have been working on this issue, and so that we really work towards that idea where we have the whole world in a way, joining this movement, because like Zuzana said, it is a very important question. It was again emphasized also with everything that's been happening now with Ukraine and Russia and all the Russian money, how important it is actually to know who's behind companies, where does money go to, but also to prevent conflict of interest within the country and everything else that was already mentioned, tax evasion and other things. So really one of the big problems of our time in a way, so definitely important topic that OGP will continue to work strongly on, I can say.
Unfortunately, they were waving to me to say that we have no more time. We don't have anything to say, even for Bosnia and Herzegovina. So you have a question. Can we make it really short?
Hi, I have a challenge for you. So you were speaking about Ukraine and Russia, and I need you to imagine that a person in Ministry of Defense is intending to leak investigations about Bucha, about Mariupol, whatever. And then it is turning to some Western journalists. And after the leak, the Putin is trying to extradite him to Russia. What would you do in that situation? And the other challenge is, what would you say to Priti Patel if she asked you, what the hell am I going to do with Assange? Thank you.
Anyone wants to answer?
So the case is that somebody in the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, Russian ministry. So somebody from Russia is trying to leak, and Putin, but Putin doesn't have to extradite him because the guy is in Russia, right?
Guys
Sorry,
in Europe, I think.
Because I haven't really understood the situation. So it's a Russian defense ministry person who is in Moscow, or?
Yes, somebody from Russia is trying to leak something to the Western media, and the Western media is based in your country. And the journalist and the person who leaked it and fled to Europe is now facing extradition process to Russia. What would you do, and what would you say to Priti Patel about Assange?
Well, I definitely think that the Western democracies shouldn't extradite such a person to Russia. I am not a legal expert, so I hope that this is possible. I really don't feel comfortable answering that question, which is beyond my expertise. But I would hope that the civil society, strong civil society in the Western countries, backed up by investigative consortiums in Europe and elsewhere, would do everything to protect such a whistleblower and not to allow them to be sent back to Russia. We could see from other cases that Russians find very creative ways how to deal with that situation as well. But I just hope that we could do everything possible not to send such people back to Russia and use that information. And about Assange, to be honest, I need to elaborate on that question. I can talk to you in the break, because I don't have a very clear standpoint on Assange. I think that the way he did it, he did the leaks, should not be repeated. I would say that the way how Mr. Snowden went about his leak, that he first recognized the importance and the magnitude of the information and the consequences that he could cause, that he worked so deliberately with Guardian journalists and other journalists to go through the data and make sure that by just putting everything out, you are not doing a harm, and you are making sure that the results will be as strong as possible. I think that was a much more responsible way than we have seen, or I have seen with Mr. Assange. But I can talk to you later, also in the sake of time.
Because we need to wrap everything up for the next panel.
No, I just wanted, because I agree with Zuzana, and obviously I feel the same, that the person should be extradited to Russia, but I would just like to mention that Russia never was, which also says a lot about the country, never was a member of Open Government Partnership. But speaking for OGP in a more broader sense about your question, we really do try to provide assistance to people fighting for open government in the countries that don't have it the best, let's say. So for instance, when things happen in Afghanistan, we have organized escape for a lot of those activists working on open government and their families in OGP. Again, we had a support in the region, because some of them found rescue in North Macedonia until they got their visas to go to Canada. the same we are doing now to help activists in Ukraine, to really provide them with as much support as we can. But obviously, when it comes to Russia, we know that the story is a bit different in terms of like we can't really influence them. But I would agree with Zuzana, what we can influence our own country. So if somebody is in our country and Russia is asking for extradition, we should definitely work, to not allow that thing to happen. Assange, I'm on this with Zuzana. I also have my reserve about the way he did it. So yeah, we can talk about it more. But I'm not black and white on that case either.
Yeah. I would really like to wrap this up, and we
Yeah,
can
sure,
continue.
we can
We can
continue.
discuss this in the coffee session, please, because they will remove me from the panel session. Thank you all for coming here. Thank you for the fruitful discussion, and I will conclude this panel session closed.